Hello, everybody. Welcome to another podcast by Pennington Choices. My name is Stewart Kerr, and I'm a principal consultant here at Pennington Choices. And today I'm joined by Neil Richards.
Hi, everybody. I'm Neil Richards. I'm a senior consultant here at Pennington Choices.
Excellent. Thank you, Neil. So, if you've seen these before, or if this is your first time viewing, you will know that we have a whole YouTube page. Please do go to that and subscribe and like as well, and you will see all the other podcasts that we've done before around a myriad of different subject matters that we go through. Everything from AWAB's law, damp and mold, through to stock condition surveying, and everything in between as well. Please do go have a look. But today we're talking about the Building Safety Act Wales. So this has recently just come in. And it is very, very new, very hot topic, particularly for all of those associations and people who look after buildings within Wales. So, to start us off, Neil is going to do a short presentation, then we're going to have a few questions that have been arisen that we've come across since the Act has been introduced. Neil.
Thanks, Stu. So today we're going to be talking about the Building Safety Wales Act 2026. So what we're going to do, myself and Stu, we're going to go through this PowerPoint presentation. We'll have a little conversation afterwards around what we know so far regarding that Building Safety Wales Act. So I just want to footnote this presentation just for the fact that implementation of the Act is still phased and a number of provisions require secondary legislation which have not come in yet. So this position is stated as of August 2026. So the Welsh Government's current consultation also closes on the 7th of September 2026. So those detailed rules are not yet settled. However, what we know so far, the Building Safety Wales Act 2026 came into law on the 27th of April 2026 and brought changes to the requirements for higher risk buildings and introduced the Building Safety Authority as the building control authority for different category buildings. The regime has been phased in with significant operational elements commencing from the 1st of July 2026 alongside the Welsh higher risk building regulations. For a fire safety consultant, assessor, managing agent, or accountable person, I'd generally treat July 2026 as a key implementation date to be aware of, even though the Act itself came into law in April of this year. So, Wales regulates 3 building categories instead of 1. So, whereas in England, we have got your one building over 18 metres, 7 stories or higher with a minimum of 2 residential units, Wales offers 3. So, this is one of the most significant differences in the scope. So in England, under the Building Safety Act, the occupational regime primarily applies to higher risk buildings. As I said, Wales introduces category 1. So this building must be at least 80 metres in height or 7 stories and have a minimum of 2 residential units. Your category 2 building is a building between 11 and 18 metres in height or 5 or 6 stories with also a minimum of 2 residential units. And then you've got your category 3 building. So this building is under 11 metres and fewer than 5 stories with a minimum of 2 residential units. So what this means is thousands of more buildings will fall under formal building safety duties in Wales compared to England. So structural safety duties extend also beyond tall buildings. In England, the strongest regulatory focus is on higher risk buildings, as we know. However, in Wales, the category 1 buildings must assess and manage fire and structural safety risks. Your category 2 buildings must also assess and manage fire and structural safety risks. Your category 3 buildings, however, and relevant HMOs must assess and manage your fire safety risks. This represents a substantial expansion of statutory duties across medium-rise residential buildings. And your category 1 and 2 buildings must be registered with the Building Safety Authority, and the duty is on the PAP to do this. The Building Safety Authority will maintain a register, and it will be an offence not to register the building, but have it occupied. So safety case reports in Wales now become a key compliance requirement. Your safety case report is already a familiar concept in England's higher risk building regime. However, under Welsh legislation, your category 1 buildings will require that safety case report, and it must demonstrate that fire risks have been assessed. So this means having your regular fire risk assessments, your fire strategies, and any other relevant surveys in place. Have you got them on a rolling program? So you need to start thinking about questions with regards to, how often are your fire risk assessments done, etc. Your structural risks have also been assessed. So do you have a recent structural survey of your premises? Are you conducting structural surveys on a frequent basis, every sort of 5 years or so? And have you considered visual structural inspections as part of your monthly or quarterly building inspections to note any signs of cracking, spalling of concrete, etc.? And how are you evidencing this? You've also got reasonable steps to ensure that they've been taken to prevent incidents. So again, your regular inspections, your reporting and recording processes, what have you got in place at the moment? Measures should be in place to minimize consequences should an incident occur. So your health and safety procedures and policies, are you monitoring incidents? Do you have trend analysis, things like that? Again, your risk assessments, so regular assessments of the building should be in place. Building safety management arrangements. So does everybody who has a part to play in managing building safety know what they are doing? Do you have those policies and procedures documented? You've also got your fire safety strategy. So a full fire strategy is important because it explains how the building is intended to achieve an acceptable level of fire safety throughout its life, and not just whether a few fire safety features are present. Your structural risk control. So again, we're talking about structure a lot. Again, ensuring inspections are carried out in the interim of a full competence survey. Your resident engagement strategies. So these should explain, as we know in England, who will be involved in making decisions about the management of the building in relation to risks of fire and structural failure. Residents should also be empowered to challenge unsafe or unreasonable decisions. You've then got your ongoing monitoring and review systems, your complaint systems. So as a PAP, you must also operate that complaint system, which must allow residents and other users of the building to raise a relevant complaint, which can be a complaint about a fire safety risk, a structural safety risk, or the failure of an accountable person to comply with the duties under the Act or regulations. So complaints in Wales can be made to the building safety authorities. So this is local authority based and the fire safety authorities as well in Wales. Your building safety case report must form part of the building certificate application process, and accountable persons will need clear evidence of the above. So the Building Safety Authority, or the BSA in Wales, is one of the biggest departures from the English system. So rather than creating a Welsh equivalent of the HSE's building safety regulator, the Welsh government opted for a locally administered building safety regime under the Building Safety Wales Act 2026. The Act was developed as part of Wales' response to the Grenfell Tower tragedy, the Hackett Review, and concerns about accountability in multi-occupied residential buildings. So a desire to create a system that gives residents stronger rights and clearer routes to raise concerns. And a key objective was to ensure that there was always a clear, identifiable body responsible for oversight and enforcement of the building safety duties in Wales. The Act provides for a building safety authority in each fire and rescue authority area of Wales. And rather than creating a new national regulator, Welsh ministers designated a local authority to act as the building safety authority for a particular area. Building Safety Authority works alongside the relevant fire safety authority, so normally your fire and rescue services. This is fundamentally different from England, where the building safety regulator operates nationally. So the Act also brought in two familiar terms, accountable persons and principal accountable persons. So as an accountable person, you are the person or organisation that has legal estate or are in possession of a common part, for example, the building owner or owner of a section of the building. Accountable persons could be a freeholder, head lessee, landlord, resident management company, or common hold association. Managing agents will not normally be the AP because they do not have legal estate in the property or have repairing obligations under statute or leases. Your principal accountable person is essentially the lead accountable person for the building. So where there is more than one AP in Wales, one of them must be the PAP. The Act contains provisions for determining who the PAP is for resolving disputes through the Building Safety Authority or tribunal. The PAP has additional duties beyond those of an AP, including responsibilities relating to fire risk assessments, registration of certain regulated buildings, your resident engagement and information, building safety reporting and records, building safety complaint system, and coordination between multiple accountable persons. So in Wales, principal accountable persons, or your PAPs, must register both Category 1 and Category 2 buildings with the Building Safety Authority, and failure to register an occupied building is an offence. The PAP must also confirm the accuracy of information held on the register every 5 years. So mandatory occurrence reporting, again, something familiar that we have in England. So the Welsh regime is very similar to the English regime during the design and construction phase. but reports are made to the Welsh Building Control Authority, so typically, again, your local authority, rather than to the building safety regulator. An occurrence in Wales is classed as an incident that can lead to the death to a significant number of people or the serious injury that needs immediate treatment in hospital or causes a permanent or irreversible disabling condition to a significant number of people. Now, your principal accountable persons must set up similar framework, ensuring that residents, staff, and others, so your contractors, for instance, can report those safety occurrences. In relation to a design, an aspect of design relating to the structural integrity or fire safety of a higher risk building that would, if built, meet the risk condition. Otherwise, an incident or situation relating to a structural integrity or fire safety of the higher risk building that meets the risk condition. You must report those safety occurrences that you have assessed and believe meet these criteria to the Building Control Authority as a safety occurrence. And you must do this by submitting that mandatory occurrence report as soon as possible without any undue delay. This must be a written report within 10 working days of the safety occurrence being identified. So we're going to move on now to your golden thread of information. So Wales have also adopted the golden thread concept where there will be a legal responsibility to keep important information about the building up to date and available through its lifetime. Now, your golden thread requirements for Category 1 buildings will be established at the design and construction stage, so that exact information will be decided for a Category 1 building at this point. The golden thread will contain key information about a building's design, construction, and ongoing management, accessible throughout its lifetime. There needs to be reliable records of important information about how the building was designed, how it was built, and how it is being managed on a day-to-day basis, which can be accessed whenever needed throughout the building's life. Information keeping requirements will be subject to consultation, and they intend that they will be proportionate to the category of the building. The government will ask people for their views before deciding exactly what information must be kept. The amount of information required will depend on how high risk or important the building is, whether there's more demanding requirements for higher risk buildings and less for your lower risk ones. Ultimately, though, like in England, the golden thread is basically a complete reliable record of the building's important safety and management information, kept from date, from design and construction throughout that building's life cycle. So we're going to move on to resident engagement. So the position as of the 11th of August 2026 appears to be: the Building Safety Wales Act 2026 contains a specific statutory duty, and I say duty, not legislation, concerning resident engagement. So in particular, Section 39 requires the principal accountable person for an occupied Category 1 building to prepare a resident engagement strategy, promoting participation to relevant persons in building safety. The Act is also in accordance with the strategy. Section 40 then deals specifically with the preparation and review of the strategy. Importantly, it leaves a number of details regarding regulations, including matters concerning when the strategy must be reviewed. The Act also specifies the basic content that a resident engagement strategy must cover, including information to be provided to residents about building safety decisions, which aspects of decisions residents will be consulted on, arrangements for obtaining and taking account of residents' views, how the effectiveness or appropriateness of participation methods will be assessed and reviewed, and other matters that may be specified in regulations. You've also got complaints procedures. So like the Building Safety Act 2022 in England, Wales has also brought in a building safety complaints procedure. So PAPs must have the complaints process in place to investigate those complaints relating to building safety risks, performance of the PAP, and any unresolved complaints can be referred to the Building Safety Authority. In Wales, there is no equivalent of the Building Safety Regulator for residential buildings. Instead, the Building Safety Wales Act 2026 established a system involving the principal accountable person, the Building Safety Authority, and the Fire Safety Authority. So let's look at the current timeline then. So Welsh Government has indicated that implementation will be phased, although timings remain subject to secondary legislation, guidance, and formal commencement orders. So as you can see on the screen, current timeline for Category 1 buildings, those 18 metres and above, registration is by December 2027. So you've still got a bit of time, but as we all know, that time from now until December 2027 is going to absolutely fly by. Those Category 1 duties then will commence from June 2028. Those Category 2 buildings between 11 and 18 metres Registration is by December 2028, and those duties should be commencing by August of 2029. And then your category 3 duties will be commencing by August of 2029. So what should you start to do if you're a Welsh organisation with these category of buildings? So first things first, you should be identifying all buildings within your housing stock and whether they fall into any of those 3 categories. Confirm who the accountable person and principal accountable person will be. You will need to review your fire and structural risk management arrangements and establish a golden thread of information. You need to develop those resident engagement processes and prepare yourself for safety case report production. So what are the crucial differences from the Building Safety Act 2022 in England and the Building Safety Wales Act 2026? Wales has a wider scope. So where the regime reaches below the 18 metre 7-storey threshold with category 2 and category 3 buildings being now brought into the framework as well. Wales also uses a tiered approach, so the duties become more extensive as the building becomes higher risk. So rather than applying one single higher risk building regime, this is why they've tiered it into category 1, 2, and 3. Wales also uses a different regulatory model. So rather than simply adopting England's building safety regulator structure, Wales places significant responsibilities on local building safety authorities and fire safety authorities. We all know implementation is still underway. The Act received royal assent in April 2026, but many substantive provisions require commencement orders and secondary legislation. The Welsh Government is currently consulting on important implementation matters, including remediation and how building height and stories will be determined. The Building Safety Wales Act 2026 is not simply the Welsh equivalent of England's Building Safety Act 2022. It takes the same post-Grenfell principles of safety, accountability, and resident involvement, but applies them through a broader and more explicitly tiered Welsh regime. And that is what we know so far, Stu.
It's really interesting, isn't it, Neil? It's very much akin to what we are already aware of and well versed within England, but it is slightly different, slightly tweaked for Wales. So, yeah, great presentation. Thanks for that, Neil. It really brings together a lot of what or what things are around in terms of the legislation that's coming in. What does that mean, and so on and so forth. So, yeah. Let's drop that presentation down here. Let's have a bit of a chin wag. So, in terms of the expectations and future secondary legislation, what do you think that secondary legislation is going to look like? So you've got those timescales there, but one of the things you did say was secondary legislation.
Yeah.
What do we think that's going to look like? Because we know that we've had a raft of secondary legislation through England. So we've had Fire and Safety England regulations, we've had the residential PEEPs regulations as well that have come
Yeah.
in, just to name some. What else do you think might what do you think might transition in Wales?
So at the moment, I do feel like there's going to be a lot of stuff that does mirror the Building Safety Act 2022. So you've mentioned there Fire Safety England regulations 2020, let's say that again.
Yeah.
So you've mentioned there the Fire Safety England regulations. So I do think having those Fire Safety England regs, within England at the moment, bringing them into Wales is only going to benefit those buildings. So having your SIB boxes in place, having those floor plans, fire door inspections, things like that. If Wales can mirror that, brilliant. It's only going to benefit their buildings. I do think there's going to be something around residential PEEPs. However, I don't know whether it's going to come in as quickly in Wales. And again, like I said, with the resident engagement strategy, at the moment, it's just a duty. It's not legislation. So I do feel like that is going to come in at some point, and it is going to be made mandatory to have that individual building resident engagement strategy in place. So that's what I think is going to be coming in. As I said, with regards to sort of our PEEPs at the moment, it's just PEEPs that are in place in those buildings. So having a properly monitored system, whether it be our PEEPs or PCFRAs, where you've got to record all your information in that, again, it's something that the buildings, I think, are going to benefit from having personally.
Yeah, absolutely. For anyone that's unfamiliar with these terms as well, PEEPs, PCFRAs are PEEPs. this is about vulnerable residents, isn't it? Identifying vulnerable residents in your buildings and then offering them support through a person-centered fire risk assessment, PCFRA, or a personal emergency evacuation plan, which is PEEP. Slightly different, slightly more involved piece of work there. So yeah, but absolutely, I see a lot of what the Wales Act is doing, and the idea of the secondary legislation that's going to come in will greatly mirror what
Yeah.
has already been put into place for England, particularly around, like you say, those fire safety England regulations, checking doors are appropriate, flat entrance doors and communal doors, SIB boxes, external wall systems, and so on and so forth. Things that, we take for granted as we've done so much work with England clients based in England on
Mm.
their buildings. What then do you see in terms of Welsh organisations getting up to speed with this? And, it's like you say, 2027 next year for registration of buildings, it's going to fly.
Yeah.
Once they've registered those buildings, there's going to be that expectation that there will be have started and be getting traction on all of the things for when the duties land
Mm.
and come into force. So, what do you see as being the organisations based in Wales, their biggest challenges?
I think I'll sort of start the question with, I think we've learned a lot in England about what not to do. So we
Mhm.
had that registration day, and there was a lot of organizations out there that A, didn't meet it or just weren't fully prepared for it, Stu. And I think
Mm.
now that this has come into effect, I would say to any organization in Wales, you need to sort of get on this now. You need to start looking at it. You need to start registering your buildings. But ultimately, I think the first thing that people need to do is maybe conduct like a gap analysis on where they're at the moment. Because as soon as they've got that gap analysis and they know what information's missing, what they need to do, they're going to put themselves in such a better place for when those buildings are registered, because we don't know who's going to get called up first yet, or when that building safety authority is going to say, well, actually, let's start with these buildings. And because like in England we had the tranching mechanism, didn't we? So we
Mm.
kind of knew what style buildings, whether they were tall, the amount of residents in them, the biggest risks, they were going to get called up first, and go down that way under the 5 year sort of phased in program. But we don't know at the moment in Wales who's going to get called up. So ultimately, I think Wales is just prepare, 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 because that's what I would do if I was working in one of these associations in Wales. I would be getting on this, getting that gap analysis done, looking at the structural surveys. Do we have them? Do we not have them? And going from there, really. But that's just my personal opinion, Stu. I don't know about yourself.
No, no, absolutely. It is about making sure that you prepare, that you understand. Dame Judith Hackett actually comes up with a great saying where she says, "It is, almost it's not acceptable to just sit there and wait for these things to happen. What you need to do is to make sure that you're starting those behaviors. So yeah, there's no reason to wait to start the process of behavior change once it is clear what is coming and what is
Yeah,
expected. So when you look at it from that mindset, yeah, organizations need to know, well, we know this is coming. We also know that in England, they've also already done a lot of this because it's been entrenched for a good few years now. Look for that support if you and do that gap analysis, like you say, because a lot of organizations may be in a good place, but they don't know it. A lot of organizations may be in that false position where actually there are big gaps, but they're not aware of what they look like. So get that gap analysis done. It will certainly support an organization in knowing where we are, where we need to be, and then that support of how do we need to get there. It's very important. I mean, we've done plenty, haven't we, with English clients, and that has been a big eye opener for a lot of organizations just to go, oh yeah, we didn't quite know to do that, or we're doing things and it's not quite documented. And, it would be a benefit to the organization to make sure that we do get these things down. Absolutely.
yeah. And I would
Well,
say in Wales as well, where they've got the three categories, it was it was all right in England because we knew 18 meters, 7 stories above. This is a higher risk building that we need to register and get a building safety case report done. However, the Welsh organisations need to go out there and categorise their buildings so that they're in the correct category. They might have 250 block builds. Are they have
mm,
they all been categorised? Do you know exactly where they stand in you know, the three categories under the Building Safety Wales Act 2026? So even just getting that piece of work done, so oh, actually we're only dealing with five category one buildings. We only need
mm,
five safety case reports,
yeah,
and things like that. So yeah, I think that there is a lot of work, but there is also the fact that they have done it slightly different in Wales is
mm,
also really beneficial because I think you know where your high priority, mid priority, low priority buildings
mm.
are that way. But yeah, no, I think it's really
Yeah.
good.
And it's important as well to make sure that the criteria of how measuring a building is approached correctly, because the amount of buildings in England that were accidentally registered as higher risk buildings and they weren't because they were measuring to the wrong point
Yeah,
of the building, that is a significant issue that came up at the initial registration. So when looking at your stock, looking at your buildings, make sure that you are measuring to the correct points using the criteria that is set out, so that you're not going to accidentally mismeasure a building and put it into one category when it's not, or worse, undermeasure it and say it's a category two when it's a category one. Essentially,
yeah,
that shouldn't necessarily happen, but you never know, do you? I think for
exactly.
me, one of the interesting things is going to be around how, because there is in England, we are used to the building safety regulator. This is now going to be split out amongst the authorities. I'm interested to know how those authorities are going to be expected to gear up in terms of the skills and competency to then look at the assessments for these buildings so that they can say whether they are suitable for residents to live in or whether there's issues that need to be addressed and so forth when those building safety cases start getting reviewed. With competency, and this is, I suppose, for all organisations, do you feel that there is that there should be a mimicking of what we do a lot of within England with like the CIOB courses and things like that, or do you think it's going down to that knowledge, experience, learning again?
I think it's a bit of both, Stu, to be honest with you. I do think, if anything, we've learned over the past couple of years is that training competency is a huge thing. We've met with quite a few people that are high up within sort of building safety or compliance that don't necessarily have those documented skills and competencies in place. Operationally, yes, they can do the job. However, just to sort of boost them and get their knowledge base a bit more
Mm,
building safety heavy, we'll always recommend things like the CIOB and things like that to help them along. But whether that's something that comes in Wales, I do not know at the moment.
mm. Again, this is things that we're going to learn about
Mm,
as these things start to progress. What will in terms of secondary legislation, competency. We already know about within the Social Housing Act that came out that there's an expectation with organisations to have certain competency qualifications for managers and senior managers. Will Wales follow something similar in terms of building safety, or will it be competency has to be demonstrated through qualifications, knowledge, experience, and so forth? So I think it's going to be interesting, and it's going to be interesting for the authorities as well on how they are going to do these and the assessment process. We're very used to the regulator having what used to be called the multidisciplinary teams, the MDTs,
yeah,
assessing building safety cases. What is that going to look like for Wales? I haven't seen anything yet that suggests what it will actually be. Will it be very similar? Will it be slightly different? Will it be completely different?
yeah.
So all of these things are going to be very, very interesting. I think the biggest takeaway from this is we've got some bare bones, haven't we,
Mm,
for the act. I think there's still a lot more thrashing out, isn't there? Particularly secondary legislation and guidance that needs
Yeah.
to come out to support all of this.
Yeah, no, you're completely bang on. I think, like you said, we have only got bare bones at the moment, and this is pretty new. So, like you said, the secondary legislation, whether it follows suit and we get things like fire safety regulations in or RPEEPs, things like that, then the more we know, the more we can do. However, at this
Mm.
stage, it's still very new and fresh. So, yeah, until that secondary legislation comes in, we're kind of just like on the edge of our seats at the moment, aren't we? Waiting for it to be like, come on, we know what we can do then, and we can
Yeah.
because it's easy to say register your buildings by this stage, but a lot of people want to. They're best practice organizations. They want to be ahead of the curve. They
Mm.
want to get everything in place so that they're fully prepared. And until everything comes in, you just can't do that,
Mm.
unfortunately. So, I did have a question for you though, Stu,
Mm.
with regards to the Building Safety Authority in Wales, Building Safety Regulator in England. What do you envisage, or what do you see as the key sort of differences? Like, how do you think that the Building Safety Authority will work different to the Building Safety Regulator in England, for instance?
It's going to, there's so many similarities that have already sort of come
Mm,
out, haven't there? There's the mandatory occurrence reporting, complaint system and things like that. So I think the regulator is, that we are used to within England is going to be very similar within those building control authorities within Wales, aren't they? They're not going to be exactly the same, but they're going to be quite similar. So I think it's going to be a sort of a smaller um, smaller team as what you would expect to see as a building safety regulator held within each building safety association within Wales. So it'll be interesting to see what it does look like. Like I say, will it be multidisciplinary teams? Will it be something different? We're yet to find that out, aren't we? I think it'll, like a lot of this thing, it'll mimic it very, very closely with slight tweaks on how they want to operate it differently to how the English have operated it with the building safety regulator in England. But in large, I think it'll be very similar in the approach and what they do. When they're talking about what buildings are going to be called up first, I don't see anything different to really from the highest. The ones with the most residential units within them, and the ones that are already known about as having issues in terms of cladding, issues in terms of structural concerns that are already in there, large panel systems with gas
mm,
and so forth. So I think they're going to be relatively similar in that respect.
yeah, 100%. Do you think that there's any, because we've been doing this a while now in England, is there any sort of lessons learned that we can give that knowledge to anybody in Wales from what we've learned
Mm.
under England doing those building safety case works and things like that?
Yeah. I think the biggest thing for me, the thing that always comes out, and we know this, don't we, from doing it with organisations, in the grand scheme of things, all organisations are managing and maintaining their buildings for people to live in them safely. What is not being done is the ability to claim, argument, and then evidence that. That is the biggest missing factor that organisations miss. So when we talk to organisations, we get told about how they do this, they do that, they do the other. We're like, that's fantastic. Where does it say you do this? How do you capture that, what you do? And then can you evidence that to me? And that's where organizations fall down. So if there is something that an organization is doing and doing well, particularly things such as building walkarounds, checks within buildings, so on and so forth, whether they be daily, weekly, monthly, quarterly, whatever that might be, make sure that those things are evidenced so that, and the reason why you're doing them, so that they can be put into the safety case. They can demonstrate that to the person reading it, because we always say, don't we? Whoever's reading this safety case report, as in all likelihood, they don't know you, they don't know how you operate, and they don't know the building that you're talking about. You've got to hold their hand and walk them through how you maintain fire and structural safety for those buildings, so that they can give you that tick of the box to say, yes, you are doing everything that you need to be doing. Here's your certificate. So that's the biggest takeaway I always have for organizations.
Yeah, no, I
What's
completely
yours, Neil?
agree. Pretty much the same. A lot of it's to do with, I think we've learned that safety management systems are a massive thing. So like you said, it's all right saying this is how we manage the building, but have you got anything documented?
Mm,
Because it's all right us saying, oh yeah, brilliant, you do it this way, but if you were to leave the organization tomorrow and somebody came in, how would they know to do it the same way as you? Because you've got nothing
exactly.
documented. It catches people out every single time. We don't try to catch them up deliberately. However, having those processes, procedures documented so that people know how you do things is so important. We always come back to things like change management. How do you manage change in a building? What would you do? Oh, well, we would just do this or this or this. Okay, but is it documented? No. It's like,
Yeah.
you need to document things. It's only going to strengthen the building safety case if
But it
you've got
strengthens the
things.
organization as well, doesn't
Yeah,
it? That's
and
the thing. It strengthens the organization. It's like you say, if people leave, they can rely upon a document that is there to say, this is what we do, this is when we do it, and this is where it is stored, which is all part of the golden thread. And then we can evidence that auditable trails. That, structural surveys is one. You might have a structural survey every 5 years. Well, what do you do in between? No organization turns a blind eye to structure, but nobody's there to say, well, we walk around every month and we say if something was to fall off or there was a big crack, we'll get it investigated. Yeah, but you can't evidence anything to me to say that you've walked around every month. Then the light bulbs come on, don't they? And it's
mm,
great to see that. So yeah,
100%.
so I think there's a lot there, isn't there, in terms of the Building Safety Wales Act. I think there's a lot that is going to mimic. And like we've said, and it's like Dame Judith Hackett says, it is not, do not wait for these things to happen. If you're already aware of what is coming down the road, start that process. We've done it with loads of clients. We can certainly support that as well. And it's about making sure that that start is understanding where are our gaps, what do we need to do, how do we need to close those gaps, what support do we need.
Yeah, 100%. And yeah, just to sort of conclude from myself as well, along with the gap analysis you just said, I think categorize your buildings. You should actually top of your list, get those your block builds categorized into 1, 2, and 3, and then at least you've got that initial surface to work from and say, right, this is how many safety case reports we're going to have to be doing. This is how many structural surveys, etc. So start with that, and like Stu said, gap analysis, find out where you're missing information, and if you need any assistance, get in touch.
Brilliant. Brilliant. Right. Well, thank you very much for listening to this podcast. As I said at the top of the podcast there, if you want to head over to our YouTube channel to look at any of our other podcasts that we have on there, please do like and subscribe, and we look forward to seeing you on the next one. Thanks a
Thanks,
lot.
guys.
Bye.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Thank you for joining us today. If you would like to speak to one of our in-house experts, please get in touch either via our website or across our social media pages. Pennington Choices, providing property surveying, consultancy and project management services to organisations nationwide. Pennington Choices, our expertise, your solution.